Hello and welcome to Chats, a television podcast, Season 14, The Chatzovers. On this season of Chats, we'll be covering the 2014 HBO drama, The Leftovers. My name is Alan, and I'm joined by the janitor who unfortunately has to clean up after that weird guy did a video game powered slide across the hospital hall. It's Magellan.
Janitor. Oh, wait. Dang, I gotta do that again. Janitor. Janitor. That's my Scrubs.
I watched an amazing episode of Scrubs today. I have to tell you about it later. You've seen it.
Okay.
It's that one.
That was a pretty incredible slide that Tommy did there in that scene.
It's ridiculous.
Like, if that was on purpose, I mean, hats off. What a graceful slide.
It's very elegant. It's very smooth. And it doesn't make a lot of sense. Just like these episodes don't make. Just kidding. These are fantastic episodes of a fantastic TV show. I'm here with my best friend. We talk about TV shows every week. We're talking about The Leftovers. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite television programs that I'm experiencing with a first timer. And here we are in the space together. Post departure, pre arrival. Ooh. This week on the Chatzovers, we're talking about The Leftovers Season 1, Episode 3, 2 boats and a helicopter.
Is that related to the secret meaning of the title?
No, but wouldn't that be funny? You know, the helicopter thing that like Curtis Connor does in all of his videos?
I don't.
Oh, that sucks that I made that reference then. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. I'm taking this again. I'm absolutely taking this again. I thought you would like that joke. Okay.
I mean, there might be somebody out there who liked that. Who
liked the Curtis Connor reference? Sure. Okay. If you got
He's
that,
a pretty popular YouTuber.
Yeah. Okay. 2 boats and a helicopter. We also talked about We're also going to be talking about BJ and the AC, and I'm very excited to get into it. Let's not beat around the bush, Magellan. Let's get right into 2 boats and a helicopter.
Okay.
This episode was written by Damon Lindelof and Jacqueline Hoyt. It was directed by Keith Gordon, and it aired July 13th, 2014. Can you tell me and the folks at home what happened in 2 boats and a helicopter, Magellan?
In this episode, in the face of dwindling church attendance and threats on his life, Reverend Matt Jameson continues to preach his gospel, that many who disappeared in the departure were sinners and not saints. Matt's campaign is detoured when he learns he may lose the church to foreclosure, forcing him to launch a desperate, last-minute plan to come up with the cash to keep it.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy. So, what I want to start by saying is, you know, I love episodes of television shows that are about side characters. I was really thrown for a loop that 2 boats and a helicopter comes this early in the series, because it feels like something that you earn after like a season of being like, what was up with Matt Jameson? What's that guy's deal? And it's like, no. And I think it's a deliberate choice, and we'll talk about this, but
yeah, definitely.
Matt is good. Now we basically set him out on his arc for the entire series, and this is sort of his origin story. So it makes a little bit more sense when you think about it like that we're like getting the Matt Jameson story this early on. Very well regarded episode, very emotional, I'd say. Action-packed in a way, I would say. And it also just taps into all of the biggest themes of The Leftovers Season 1, at least, that I love so much and I'm really excited to talk about. So, in general, what did you think about 2 boats and a helicopter?
I love Coen Brothers movies.
Same.
That's what I thought about it. And this is basically a Coen Brothers movie, and it's pretty good. So,
do you want to watch a man cosmically fail as if the world is destined to destroy him and come out alive at the end of it? 2 boats and a helicopter.
Yeah. Yeah, I really, really loved it. I mean, I think it's such a fascinating character study, and it makes this bold choice, like you're saying, to put it so early in the season, to basically say, like, every corner of this world matters and touches every other corner. Because when we saw Matt Jameson episode 1, it's like, he's just some guy who's saying wacky stuff.
Why is he hugging Laura in episode 2? Yeah.
Right. Like, he's not ever going to come back. Episode 2, yeah, we have that question. And then episode 3 is like, yeah, he's the main character, by the way. It would be like if the 3rd episode of The Office was all about Creed.
Yeah. You're like, who is this? Okay.
Right. Which is pretty fun. And I literally can't think of another TV show that has ever done that I've seen. And they, in so doing, explore another angle on the departure and on spirituality and faith in this world that is, in a way, I think more accessible than, the stuff with the guilty remnant or whatever, because Matt is somebody who's like a very recognizable version of like an Anglo-Saxon, like a waspy person, basically. The kind of like classic American, I guess he's Protestant. I can't quite tell.
I believe he's Catholic, and I know that I think that based on the wafers that are like the circular wafers, but I'm also not positive.
I was getting potentially Anglican vibes, which is like essentially Catholic, but he could be Catholic.
Oh, I confirmed. And it's also it's listed on the church. He's Episcopal.
Episcopal. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he's like, your classic, some brand of Protestantism. Mm-hmm. And it's like that kind of, I think, more recognizable present day version of Christianity in America, looking at the departure and post-departure. And what does somebody with that set of values do in this world, as opposed to somebody who's following a set of values created by this world or this circumstance, which I thought was really interesting, and I think helped me to flesh out my understanding of how faith operates in this world and in this town. So I really liked it. And I also liked that like Matt is a fucking terrible person. And
you're right.
The episode just relentlessly not only screws him over and sends him on this Job journey, but also reminds you every single scene that he is an ass and so manipulative and terrible. And like, you're supposed to empathize, but you're not supposed to forget those complicated and like problematic aspects of him in the process of empathizing with him.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the things the episode does so very well. And it's very much on the back of the incredible performance by Christopher Eccleston here, that you like Matt and you understand why he does the things he do. And you can often say to yourself, I would probably do some of these things. But every couple of scenes, he crosses a line and he says some stuff that you're like, oh, Matt, you didn't have to. You went a little bit further than I personally would have, and I don't feel with you anymore. And I like that about it a lot, that he's messy. He's an imperfect priest. Because, like the Job story, which this is entirely doing from the Bible, is about a man who is like meant to suffer by God so that he can see that it's worth it in the end. And it's like a sort of portrait of suffering, a classical like character in the Bible who suffers. And Matt is just somebody who every single thing about his life, every aspect of his life since the departure is, this has to have meant something. This 100% has to have been intentional and will work in my favor in the end. He's the definition of that.
And even before the departure, the episode starts with him telling this story in church about himself as a kid, presumably.
Right. From birth, he has these feelings. Yeah, sorry.
Where he talks about how when he was a kid, he had a sister who a younger sister, all of a sudden she's getting all the attention. He prays to God, I want some attention. And then he gets cancer. And then he has cancer for a while and gets all the attention that he prayed for because he's dying of cancer. And then he goes into remission. And there's this amazing quote where he says, now what is this boy going to do? Does he decide that he was punished or that he was rewarded? And that's Matt's entire character is, okay, this terrible thing happened to me. It must have happened for a reason. It must have been a test of some kind. And my job is to make sense of what I was tested for, essentially. Right. And yeah, it's really fascinating to watch somebody operate from that base principle because it colors every single thing that he does. And it leads to him being intensely resilient and like clear-eyed and passionate, but also completely blind to any potential flaws or hypocrisies in what he's doing. It makes him deeply egocentric.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating portrait.
And it's, I think I saw somewhere in your notes that you were saying like one of your critiques is that the show has like become entirely about
It's
religion.
more of a next episode critique than this one.
Yeah, that's fair. I think in this episode though, like religion is at the center of it, specifically Christianity, and again this idea of, okay, this is gonna suck for a while, but it's gonna be worth it. Which, like, I myself as a Christian person have often thought in times of strife, like, okay, whatever, I'm gonna grin and bear it. This is gonna keep sucking for a while. I have to let it suck, but it's going to mean something. And, he runs into all these different characters who are like, Matt, you just don't have to do this anymore. You don't have to be, like, a martyr.
Right.
You don't have to put all these signs up, and you don't have to, like, buy the church back. You can just, like, let life happen to you. And Matt is somebody who desperately wants to hang on to, because it's the only thing he has. I mean, we are presented with a man who has a church that is failing. We see, like, bare minimum attendance on one of his sermons. Beautiful sermon, by the way, but like, yeah, really low attendance. He's not able to afford to let the place get foreclosed, to prevent it getting foreclosed. His wife is in a coma. He's comatose permanently because of an accident that happened at the moment of the departure. We see a flashback
around the corner
later
from where we were in episode
exactly 1. Yeah, reminding us again that Mapleton is a complex town where a lot of different things happened. And he's literally, around the corner from the woman who we saw in the pilot who like lost her son in the back seat. It's just over
and
here.
We saw this accident in the background of the pilot too.
Yep, we saw the car hit the other car. We didn't realize at the time, but that was Mary, his wife, in the driver's seat. And she hit the airbag and was unconscious, and then has been comatose ever since. And we get flashbacks to like their relationship and like them having sex, and the more we get into Matt's mind in the episode, the more you feel like he is also trying to atone for something that he feels he's done wrong. Like he has made some sort of error, or he just needs to keep suffering so that he can come through to the other side. Because you also get like this wild dream sequence, I'd say partway through the episode, where like his bed is on fire and he has sort of like lecherous thoughts about Lori, Kevin's wife. And he's just deeply afraid of like just the thoughts in his head. Like, these aren't even necessarily actions he's done, but there's again just something deeply spiritual about like, I shouldn't even be thinking this, and that's what makes me bad, and that's why maybe I just need to keep on pushing through the worst part of my life. And I love this character so much. I think it's so brilliantly done. Time after time, every scene of this episode is like, hey, here's a situation where you could very easily say, not today. I'm actually going to pause my faith today and just be a regular guy who lets things happen. And Matt says, absolutely not. These people in the guilty remnant who I don't agree with are being attacked. I stop and I help them. That means that I get knocked unconscious for 3 days. It means that I lose something because I decided to help others. And, those are moments where I do like Matt Jameson, and I want to see this guy succeed. And so I think that's why the episode's like second act break of the whole thing at the casino is so intense, is because by that point you're like, this guy needs a win. Like, let's just get this guy one win, right? Like, he has to get it, and it can't have caveats, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think what's really fascinating about the position that this episode puts the audience in throughout is you want to see him win, but you don't want to see him succeed, because like Matt Jameson's world is not quite how you want the world to look, So when that casino scene when he's playing on the roulette, on the one hand it's like, yeah, I want to see the ball hit the red again and again and again. I want to see him win $16,000 in 3 spins on the roulette. But on the other hand, it's like, I don't really want this guy to like have a church and preach stuff to people and do the things the way that he's doing them. So it's an interesting tension of like, what am I actually rooting for here? And the episode ends up kind of doing both, where it gives you the little win that he has, shows you how he's able to kind of, because in that moment he's like, okay, I won because God like wanted me to, right?
Yeah, he made the ball land on red.
And so you can see kind of the moments that he's choosing as proof that he's chosen or he's on the right path, and then he gets the shit kicked out of him, literally. Right. And then he fucking bashes the guy's head into the concrete, and you're
That's
like, oh brothers. My God, what the fuck just happened?
My like whole body was shaking during that whole exchange, and I love you noted from like that point onwards, you correctly predicted every plot moment for the rest of the episode. Basically, you were like, he's gonna. You mentioned like, right? You're like, he's gonna get robbed, and then he's gonna finally have the money. Oh, he gets knocked out. Okay, he's gonna wake up, and they're gonna be like, your note literally said like it's gonna be Thursday.
I wrote, okay, so he got a rock to the face. There's that whole hallucination dream sequence. Then I wrote, tell me he was out too long to save his church. Like a bro, it's Thursday type thing. And then he goes to the bank, and the bank guy says that was 3 days ago, when he tries to give the bank guy the money. Because the whole thing is like somebody's buying the church.
Corporate LLC, by the way.
Yeah. And if you can pay even $1 above their price in cash, you can keep it. You have a day. And he's able to do it. And so I wrote, tell me that he was like unconscious for too long. Like it's a bro, it's Thursday type thing. And then the banker says, that was 3 days ago. That was on Monday. This is Thursday. So I crushed it. I nailed the day. Mm-hmm. And then when the banker's like, they bought it, they're moving into your church or whatever, and he's like, who's they? I wrote, tell me the guilty remnant bought the church, bro. Tell me that right now. And then he goes, and the guilty remnant, they're painting the stained glass windows white, and they bought the church.
I love, by the way, what this season has been doing with the guilty remnant. I'm like absolutely fascinated by their ethos and how it's changed from the book, from what I understand. And just the choice of like, you understand from their perspective why they're doing this, right? We can't have old things. We need to reset. Religion has no place in our world anymore. If we're going to have a new world post-departure, we can't cling to old things. It's just a very classic, like, we need to reset the world sort of thing. But it also requires a deep, deep lack of empathy to seriously paint over the stained glass. And as we see in the first episode, in the first scene, the beautiful stained glass windows of this church. And they're like, nope, this can't exist. And we have enough money and capital to just buy this out. They call it corporate LLC, and they learn later that just means it's like the guilty remnant can buy it without any qualms. It makes them scary as a form of villain, but also like they have such a strong ethos that I can't help but be like interested in their story.
I also was kind of feeling, though, by the end of these 2 episodes, to reference another Coen Brothers movie, a lot like Walter in The Big Lebowski, when he says, nihilists, fuck me. I mean, say what you will about the tenets of National Socialism, dude. At least it's an ethos. Like,
exactly.
The guilty remnant, there's not quite a thing there, except that they're like, fuck it, man. What even matters in this world? And it is scary, and it is interesting. And I need the show to give me like a little more than that. I want to see what the next phase of their operation is, because it seems like we're joining them at the time where they're getting like really bold. They're setting up shop in this church. They do the things they do in the second episode. Right. So I know we're going to make moves, but I'm a little impatient to see what is Patty's master plan here.
Where all the cigarettes really for at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I'm into it. And I know that it's like that's a season 1 thing. Is like the guilty remnant are like the subject of this season in a way. And everything swirls around them no matter how hard we try not to. It always comes back to them. And it's like it kind of, like I said, makes them into this background villain, where you're so fixated on Matt Jameson this whole ep, and then you get to the end and you're like, oh God, we're in the rest of Mapleton. Like the Guilty Remnant's been around, and he saved them, and they stop in front of his car, and he gives them clothing. Like he hasn't really done anything wrong by them. He just doesn't fit into their future worldview. And so in a way, Matt Jameson is sort of getting pushed out of the world by them, which is so interesting.
What the bleach was about, right? He bleaches clothes
so.
and sells it to them or something like that?
I think he just donates it to them, because there's a part where he also just puts a box in front of them, and he's like, here's your donations. But those clothes, I don't even know if they were white. No, he says, like, I couldn't get them in white. So those are not.
Yeah, I think he maybe ran out of bleach or something.
I think either the bleach was, for that, or like maybe for laundry, but more likely that. They must go through a lot of bleach, is the thing, though. But I also want to talk a bit about the role of different women in Matt's life. Obviously, his wife, Mary, and that just heartbreaking scene where he sits in bed with her, or sits not in bed with her, excuse me. He carries her to bed, lays her in bed, and then sits on a mattress lays on a mattress on the floor, and stares at this honestly very on the nose like picture of Job that he has in his room. I think it borders, like, lots of stuff in this episode borders on way too on the nose. Like more than the show has even done previously. I know, like, some of the Jill stuff, you're like, okay, we get it. But like they really just put Job in his room and he just stares at him, but like you believe it when he cries.
I only knew that because I was like, wait a minute, was that Job? And I looked it up, and it's like some scene from the Bible with Job and his wife, actually, which is even more on the nose because it's in his wife's bedroom. But that's on the nose to the point where it's like, maybe you could argue that Matt as a character chose that and decorated his house that way.
He wants to be a Job.
And it's Matt who's on the nose about, his role in the eyes of God or whatever, but it definitely isn't subtle. If like your first guess is like, oh yeah, okay.
It's probably it's
Job. That's right.
And Mary, I mean, like, just the brief little bit of her that we get to see. I forget, I don't remember the actress's name off the top of my head, but she has been around in a lot of stuff. I think you said she was in the West Wing.
I've seen her in the West Wing. Yeah.
I think it's a choice to like hire a pretty well-known actor to be like comatose in your show, because I have a feeling either we're gonna get a lot of flashbacks to her, which is more likely, or like
she's gonna come out of her coma at some point.
Yeah, Janelle Maloney is the actress's name. So there you go. I find her super, like, his just the departure is the reason he quote unquote lost his wife. It has to mean something, so he has to take care of her and pay his housekeeper bundles of money, and he's way behind on payments because he needs to take care of his wife. Why would you not? And that's like such a hard thing that so many people have to deal with, is like if you have a spouse or a partner who is disabled in some way, who is, you know, incapable of like doing things being autonomous on their own, like you have to center your life around them. And he has so many things like that. He's like, the church is the only thing that matters to me. Okay, actually the church and my wife. Okay, well, it's actually the church and it's everything but him. And I think that's also where I really like Matt Jameson, is just everything he wants is about just having his little bubble of safety and like the things that matter to him. Unfortunately, though, that means that he also has to take from others because there's only so many resources and he doesn't have the means to, you know, get enough money himself. So we learn in this episode also that he is the brother of Nora Durst, who we've seen the past two episodes. That's why they were hugging in episode 2. And he goes to visit her, and this is the moment, right? This is the part where you're like, oh, Matt Jameson, maybe not the coolest guy in the world, actually. Because he starts by asking her for money, which, you know, deeply uncomfortable for me, like family members, siblings asking each other for money. Not that that's like happened in a big way in my life, but it's a really tough conversation to have.
Uncomfortable. Yeah.
Super duper duper uncomfortable. And then you're like, okay, well, it's just, she's probably rich, right? Like she does like a lot of public speaking, or like kind of rich, like she has public speaking roles, and it's only
but also like who has $130,000 lying around?
Yeah, to just give away. And he says it's a loan, implying that like he will earn it back and pay her back. But it's like, when are you going to earn $130,000 back at
on
a
what
church?
scale of time are you making that amount of money? Yeah.
Running a church, like, it doesn't work like that. They barely are self-sufficient often. It's very sad. Like,
Yeah.
and then he twists the knife a little bit, right? Because he realizes he's on a really tight time scale, and instead of just being a normal person and saying, okay, sorry, not normal, let's be fair, a person who's not at the end of his rope and saying, never mind, he says, they talk about the posters that he's been putting up. How he does a lot of, like, really creepy amounts of research on people, and, like, this is also how he finds the casino, is he finds somebody who, like, bet his child's college fund at the casino. And so he does all this research, and he tells Nora one of the pieces of research he has is, hey, your husband, the one who got disappeared, he was cheating on you, and I never posted that, and I'm never going to publish it. So just saying. And it's like, imagine being Nora in that point. Like, the disrespect that your literal brother is bringing to you by being like, hey, that guy that, like, disappeared from your life along with your only 2 children in the world, he kind of sucked. Just a heads up. Anyways, can I have $130,000?
Right.
Awful.
And she was going to give him the money too.
She was close. Yeah.
If he would just stop publishing his pamphlets, but of course he's not going to do that.
Because he has to. Right?
Yeah.
Because he feels this sense of, like, holy justice that, like, I must do XYZ and I can't break my bubble for other people. And so I think that it ends up being kind of like one of the morals of the episode is, like, you have to get out of yourself a little bit and be like, you can't just make yourself a martyr. You have to do things for other people also, and be a member of the world. So I think that's, like, something that Matt is going to, like, take out of this, which, again, it's like, that's why this is episode 3, is we gave our character an arc and a storyline instead of just, like, here's a thing that happened.
Yeah. I think ultimately, to me, what is kind of the, like, theme of him in this episode is, he says in that sermon at the beginning, he had to decide as a kid, was I being punished or rewarded? And he says that he does things out of a sense of, like, I was rewarded with this test from God or whatever, but he acts out of bitterness and spite, I think, in a lot of ways. Like, him publishing these pamphlets about, these people were sinners, is sort of about, like, let's make sure that we're talking about this in the right way. Let's make sure that we're coming to our senses here. But it's also really about, like, my wife was a good person, is a good person. Now she's in a coma and nobody's talking about her. Everybody's talking about the person who disappeared and caused the car to crash into her, and, like, what the fuck is up with that? And so there's this, like, deeply personal vendetta or quest on his part that I think is born out of bitterness, as well as, other motivations that I don't want to rob him of. But I think it's an open question that the episode sets out at the beginning of, like, is he acting this way because he's, like, feeling like he was punished and he wants to get back at the world? Or is he genuinely operating from a place of, like, I was tested and I grew as a result of that test?
Right. And where I differ so much from Matt is, like, he is somebody who he thinks, he believes in his heart that he doesn't want that many things. He just is like, once I have, it's the Coen Brothers thing again. Once I have XYZ, then I'm done. I will stop gambling. I will stop asking people for things. But what he doesn't realize is, like, getting there requires you to actually, like, truly harm other people. That line that hits me so hard is when Nora says to him in their kitchen, why do you always have to do that? Make me upset and then ask me not to get upset. Which is, like, painful thing that family members can say to each other that just, like, hurts so much, right? Is, like, you, like, react to me and say awful things, and then you're like, but come on, like, you're still gonna give me the money, right? I can say bad things. And he just has this worldview of, like, yeah, but that it's worth it, because, again, endgame, he's always thinking about, like, I'm gonna get out of this and it's gonna be worth it, even if I'm terrible to my sibling and this one person I have in my life, it's gonna be worth it. And it's just not. Like, what's amazing is he gets the money. To trace the path of the money here for a sec, he sees some doves on the casino table. He bets on red. Some people see him betting. He wins exactly a little bit over enough money to buy back the church. In the parking lot of the casino, he gets assaulted by the man who is watching him, who he then smashes against the sidewalk or against the street. And this like blood-soaked envelope he tries bringing after like driving away, and stops to help the guilty remnant, gets hit by a rock, and then gets up and he says, I must make it. I have this bloody bag of literal cash. I can bring this to the bank. That's a normal way to like pay off a loan, right? And yeah, it was never worth it. And he doesn't even lose the money. He then buries it because he's like, I'll use this at a different point. But it's literal blood money that all of this episode was for, that didn't even help him do the thing he was trying to do. So over and over again, the leftovers like gives us entire arcs. This is the same thing that happens in episode 4, where they're like, okay, well, all we need to do is get the one thing. We just got to find the baby Jesus. And at the end of the episode, you're like, what were you looking for? What did you want? Which, if we can zoom out for a sec, I think is also the show saying like, these characters think that there's one thing that they need to find out, which is why things happened. Why did the departure happen? Why did I stay? Or why didn't, my partner or my family members stay? Stuff like that. And they just aren't finding them. They're bumping into walls left and right.
There's this poem by this guy Larry Levis that I think I read on one of our bonus episodes. There's like a Chats Nights a while ago where we read some stuff. It's called Elegy with a Chimney Sweep Falling Inside It. And there's this line in that poem that I think about all the time, or this series of lines that I think is like super relevant to this episode and bridges us to the next episode. Yeah. Which is Larry Levis says, in this way and in no other was the soul gradually replaced by the tens of thousands of things meant to represent it. And like Matt Jameson in this episode is someone who has allowed the things that were meant to represent the soul replace his soul. Like God doesn't really care about you keeping your church or like printing your pamphlet. He's occupied by all these kind of material concerns. And I think the visual storytelling is really great there with when he goes to print the pamphlets and there's not enough ink. And it's like, buddy, why aren't you taking this as a sign? Or when he gets to the stoplight,
that one,
and the stoplight blinks and turns into the casino light. And it's like, dude, there are all these like symbolic moments that are telling you that you're focused on the wrong shit. Your car is literally held together with duct tape right now to carry you around to these various things.
There are doves on the red light. There are literally doves like, stop. They're telling him, Matt, stop. Don't take this money. It's not going to be worth it.
There's, like you're betting on red.
Come
anyway, on. But yeah, all of these indications that like what he's focused on are the tens of thousands of things meant to represent the soul and not the soul itself. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, he does all of these like terrible things to justify reaching these ends. He presumably kills that guy or hospitalizes him at the least. He gambles, he does all sorts of stuff, he manipulates people. He doesn't come out of this a good person, which I think is a really interesting, it seems like larger theme of the leftovers, which is like, why are we so preoccupied with these like totems of faith or these things that are meant to stand in for our souls? And I think it's because people in Mapleton and the world at large are feeling completely lost and clinging to things that represent things but aren't the things themselves.
Beautifully said. And I think, we cling tighter and tighter to those things as the world collapses around us. And there's a deep humanity too, to like one of my favorite, this is a stray note, but also just a funny moment. He sees the clown when he goes to the hospital. And he's in the elevator with the clown from the pilot, and he says, I guess you and me are going to the same place. Which, like,
so funny.
Yeah. And it's great awesome, line. Right? And there's like there's something symbolic about it too. It's just like you're going to use this clown again. You're going to bring levity to it. I love that so much about this show is that they never like keep things in the grim space for too long without being like, yeah, but also this can be, there's levity, you know?
Yeah. And also like, what is the difference between religion and comedy at the end of the day in a world like this? Aren't they both just paths to comfort in a sense?
Right.
Yeah. One of my favorite moments of the episode was when he gets to that young girl's room who he had his congregation pray for, who's in a coma. And the orderly guy, he's like, hey, is Emily up here? And the guy's like, she got up and asked for a Sprite. And he's like, wow, we prayed for her this morning. And he's like, cool, she woke up last night. So like,
thanks.
What you did didn't do anything. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, beautiful and hilarious. I really liked when he says to the guilty remnant, Matt Jamieson just cannot, he's not, when you're a Bible guy, not like, I'm not trying to do the burn notice when you're a spy thing. I'm more just saying when you're like a person of faith, you always talk like this. You always talk in like in quotes. I know people who are like this. He says, I've come this far, I'm not going back, to the guilty remnant, which is such a like meaningfully like packed statement. Like, I know you guys want to recruit me. I know that I help you. I'm not going to stop helping you, but you're never going to get me. Even if you literally buy out his church. He's like, we're not. There's no belief in my mind for a second that Matt joins the guilty remnant at any point. Because what is life to this guy at this point, if not his faith and being firmly entrenched in what he believes right now? So I love that. I love that moment as well.
Yeah.
I wish the episode didn't end on "Take Me to Church" for the credits. I thought that was very corny. But it's also 2014, and the song is good. Yeah, you didn't hear the credit song?
I think I did, and I totally blocked it out of my mind. That's so stupid.
Yeah, they did "Take Me to Church" by Hosier, and I'm like, okay, it's 2014. Like, I'm gonna allow it, but you guys do have to go to music selection jail for that one. Sorry.
That's dumb.
I have one last thing about this episode before we take it. Do you have any other stray notes, by the way?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. The episode title, Two Boats and a Helicopter.
Yeah, so what's up with that?
Yeah, so I didn't explain it to Magellan, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners aren't familiar. Why is it called Two Boats and a Helicopter? What does that have to do with Matt Jamieson, a character who's so entrenched in his beliefs and wants more than anything for his sacrifice to have meaning? Two Boats and a Helicopter is referencing a joke, sort of a short story joke that goes like this. I'm just going to read it. It's not too long, and you'll get it at the end. A storm descends on a small town, and the downpour soon turns into a flood. As the waters rise, the local preacher kneels in prayer on the church porch, surrounded by water. By and by, one of the townsfolk comes up the street in a canoe. You'd better get in, preacher. The waters are rising fast. No, says the preacher. I have faith in the Lord. He will save me. Still the waters rise. The preacher's up on the balcony now, wringing his hands in supplication, when another guy zips up in a motorboat. Come on, preacher. We need to get you out of here. The levee's gonna break any minute. Once again, the preacher is unmoved. I shall remain. The Lord will see me through. After a while, the levee breaks, and the flood rushes over the church until only the steeple remains above the water. The preacher is there, clinging to the cross, and a helicopter descends out of the clouds. A state trooper calls down to him through a megaphone. Grab the ladder, preacher. This is your last chance. Once again, the preacher insists the Lord will deliver him. And predictably, he drowns. A pious man, the preacher goes to heaven. After a while, he gets an interview with God, and he asks the Almighty, Lord, I had unwavering faith in you. Why didn't you deliver me from that flood? God shakes his head. What did you want from me? I sent you 2 boats and a helicopter. And that's it, right?
That's pretty funny. Yeah.
I can't. That's such a good title, though, right? Because that's just Matt. Yeah. He's like, it has to come. It's gonna come, and he's drowning.
Yeah.
I when I found that out, I was like, this is one of the most beautiful episode titles. This is incredible. I love this show so damn much.
That's such a good title. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's 2 boats and a helicopter. We'll be back after this brief musical break to discuss BJ and the AC.
Welcome back to the Chatzovers. It's still me, Magellan, and I'm still here with Alan. Hi, Alan.
It's still me. No.
So, our second episode this week was the Leftovers Season 1, Episode 4, entitled BJ and the AC, which doesn't stand for what you think it does.
Unless you're really, really smart.
What? It's Baby Jesus and the Antichrist?
Yeah, supposedly, but that's not even corroborated. It's just on the... It has been theorized but never confirmed that the initials in the episode's title stand for Baby Jesus and the Antichrist, with the latter referring to Christine's baby. Baby Jesus I get. I picked that up immediately. But whatever. I think it's supposed to also sound like BJ and the Bear or something, like they're just being cute. I truly don't know. Not all the titles are good.
It's a pretty bad title.
Especially next to two boats and a helicopter. Come on.
Yeah. Written by Damon Lindelof and Elizabeth Pearson, directed by Carl Franklin and Leslie Linka Glatter. It aired on July 20th, 2014. Alan, what happened in BJ and the AC?
Coming at you on 90.1.
That's probably the other reason they named it that, because it sounds like a quote.
Sorry.
No, the gag was good. That's just 8 times louder than I expected, so...
Sorry, let me try that again. Oh, thanks, everybody.
Oh, thanks.
Whoops,
Oh,
nope.
man.
There we go.
Damn, that one goes...
Okay.
Oh, there's a cough in there.
Yeah, I cut that one off a lot sooner than it actually ends.
In this episode, a holiday display goes wanting, sending Kevin scurrying to find out who is responsible. Tom and Christine run into trouble at a hospital and on the road. Kevin retrieves a surprise detainee from a neighboring police station and receives unexpected visitors at home. The guilty remnant put its stamp on the holiday season. Wait, who's the surprise detainee from a neighboring police station? That's incorrect.
I think it's Patty.
No. I think that there was something on the trivia that was like, this is not a plot point. This was like, this is the official synopsis I pulled this from, and it's wrong.
Oh.
There's nothing about a detainee from a neighboring
police
station.
That's weird.
Yeah, that's just a straight up error in the official HBO summary of the episode.
Okay.
Sorry about that, guys. The guilty remnant does put its stamp on the holiday season in a big way here on 97.5 BJ in the AC. What's going on, everybody? I'm BJ.
And I'm the AC.
Keeping it cool here in Bobby Joe, Michigan. We're talking The Leftovers. This is a very serious... it's a very serious episode of television. Hilarious at the same time. Hilarious. John, in general, can I get a temp check?
Sorry.
Just a temp.
I thought you were waiting for another rim shot. I'm sorry.
I'm always waiting for a rim shot. Okay. We have to take his... just like the baby Jesus in this episode, we have to take Magellan's soundboard and throw it out the car window.
Wah. I didn't have a baby crying, so I did that.
No, that was your soundboard. I thought you recorded that.
Wah. I do have... Oh, no, I have it.
Cry for me. Crawl on the floor and cry like a little baby. Can you do that, Alden? Can you cry out like a little baby for the film? It would be so beautiful. Crawl over there and crawl around and cry like a baby.
All right, we're going to go ahead and speed run the episode because now we need to cry like a baby.
Get real.
We are going to get real and talk about the episode.
Let's stop. I'll give you my temperature check.
Yeah, give it to me.
This episode continues on that theme we were talking about of... in a world post-departure, people clinging to symbols, totems, objects, representations of things, trying to imbue them with meaning. And this episode is an interrogation of the process of imbuing something with meaning, right? Mm-hmm. Because we start on this incredible shot of like the formless plastic goo that gets poured into the molds at the baby doll factory and turned into baby doll heads. That's where the episode starts. And the episode ends on that shot of the baby Jesus doll having been tossed out of Kevin's truck window. And we stare at the doll. The episode basically saying like, in the past 50 minutes, you really imbued this like hunk of plastic
Pink
goo
goo.
with a lot of meaning, huh? Why'd you do that? What did this ever mean to anybody? Why was Kevin like making this his crusade? Why was his daughter making it a symbol of everything that she was rebelling against? You know, it's an interesting.
It's just pink goo.
Right. It's an interesting question. I think this episode has done a disservice by watching it immediately after episode 3, which I did, because I think it kind of, the best things of it are just hitting basically the same themes and ideas from the previous episode from a different angle. That question of like, what is meaning? Where does it come from? Why do we put it places? And what do we do about that? And also that more largely being a question of faith and what does it mean to have faith and what do we have faith in and that sort of stuff. And I think I was feeling a little fatigued by that because I'm someone who enjoys the part of the Star Wars prequels where they talk about the trade agreements and like the sort of politics and economics and the other bigger picture lenses that we can take on things. And I want to know what is not just what is like faith and religion look like in the world of the leftovers, but like how do you run a society when 2% of people disappear? I don't know. I'm curious about other questions. And I didn't think this episode was asking any new questions. It was just like asking the same questions in admittedly new, interesting ways with new symbols and visuals to go with it. So overall, I thought it was pretty good. I just think watching it right after Two Boats and a Helicopter didn't do it any favors.
Agreed 100%. It's a plot episode. It's a moving things forward in places that we didn't even necessarily care about just yet episode. And it's also a traveling episode. So, like, it does all the things it needs to do. I think you hire people like Leslie Linka Glatter to write, like, good episode of television that's not particularly remarkable, but is very good at what it's trying to do. And I think it succeeds at that.
She directed it, didn't she?
Yeah, that's what I said, right? Directed?
You said right.
You know, we know what I meant, guys. She directed it. Damon was over here writing his mystery boxes with his homie Elizabeth Peterson, and meanwhile Leslie and Carl Franklin, which is a great name, are directing.
I just think that's an important distinction because, like, to me, a lot of the visual choices are what made this interesting.
That's fair enough.
Like, I think the direction elevates the script.
The okay script, yeah.
Yeah.
But let's talk about it. So there's a couple of... We're going to just basically hit the Garvey family plots here. Because it's this episode mostly centered on the Garveys in their various situations. Tom and Christine's little odyssey is in its own corner of the universe.
And we shall treat it as such. And talk about
isolating
it now.
Yeah, exactly. They're in like a... Is this a shelter of some sort? Is this like I don't know where they are.
Yeah, it seemed like a hostel of some kind or something.
That would make sense. And earlier we were talking about errors in the official summary. There's also a like fundamental error here where so Christine gets attacked by a man who is not wearing pants at all. And he's speaking Greek. The subtitles say that he's speaking German, which is not true. He's speaking Greek.
Okay.
I think that's just somebody messed up and didn't notice what language or something. But what really matters is that this guy's wang is just fully out. It's on HBO, or we're seeing Pangus. That must be weird, right? Acting. How many? I mean, I'm sure it's prosthetic, but like,
not. It might just be his real penis.
Pangus. You think?
Yeah.
So?
Why would it need to be prosthetic?
You don't always act with your real Pangus out when you do things like this. I don't think so. I know in like sex scenes and stuff they usually use a prosthetic. I don't know.
Yeah, but I feel like that's because you're coming into contact with another person. Like
he's wrestling Tom.
Yeah, but you don't see his penis in that shot. Maybe he's got a little underpants on in that shot or something. I don't know. I think that was his real penis. I would be stressed out being this guy, like rolling around and getting into a fight scene with my junk out. So, you know, kudos to you, man, for being a brave performer. But yeah, it was a weird choice. Like, I guess the reason was just to be like, oh, this guy,
It's weird.
who knows who knows what he's gonna do. He's got his pants off. Uh-oh.
And it makes the scene later when Tom tries to explain this to the nurse all the less convincing.
True.
I'm sure
Yeah.
she's also like, can you describe the person? He's like, well, his like, dick was out. She's like, what do you like? Yeah, that's not in the episode, but
Yeah.
in general. Basically, Tom and Christine are in this episode made like they are both made less likable and more incompetent in kind of like funny but interesting ways. Because Christine like will talk to anyone and it's just like making friends with strangers and talking to guys on the bus, and it's like you're allowed to do that, but you are like a high value target right now and you should be aware of that. And but like she just seems like she's here having a fun vacation and she's not here to like be taken somewhere important. But at the same time, Tom like is bad at this job. He's bad at this job of protecting Christine.
Yeah, he's pretty bad at it.
Because he beats the guy up and then they leave. They take her to a hospital to get checked out. They do an ultrasound. Very uncomfortable scene where the nurse is like, hey, she has bruises on her stomach, like a lot of bruises. He's like, oh, a guy beat her up. And it's just the most like, if I'm the nurse, I'm calling the security immediately. As this guy with bloody knuckles.
Tom has bloody
like,
knuckles. He's acting shifty. He's being vague.
Yeah.
And then he bolts it down the hall. It's like, dude, you could have explained yourself here. I don't know.
It's dramatic tension. It's not. I'm not gonna say it's fake dramatic tension because I understand. Like I said, if he was like a naked man beat us up in a youth hostel, it would be like hard to swallow. And if you're an ultrasound nurse, I'm sure you've like seen this story before. Unfortunately, where the guy is like, I don't know who the dad is. That's weird. Those bruises aren't. That's so weird. Like they know that.
I don't think it's even out of character for Tom because he's a kid. He's like a college age kid, presumably. It's just not fun to watch, and my interest in this plot has basically plummeted to nothing.
Pretty much same.
Don't want to follow these characters.
No, I don't, and I don't know like where it's going. I think it's cute later when. So just to leap this forward, he runs away. He eventually comes back to get Christine. And he's like, we gotta go, and then they leave, and she has this dream at some point, like before the guy assaults her at the beginning of the episode, about a bunch of bodies wrapped in white, or bodies in white. And later, when they're on this Greyhound bus, and he's talking to the other army guy named Tom, the bus stops, and lo and behold,
really funny, by the way. I laughed out loud when she's like, Tom, this is Tom.
Hey, Tommy, what's up? And he's like clearly flirting with her, and Tom's like, I hate you. But he just woke up from a Greyhound nap, which I have done so many times, and
Powerful
I know what
naps,
it's like. The most powerful. And so it seems like literally a truck or something full of corpses has rolled over, and the bodies are strewn about in the street.
So
and Tom, the military guy, by the way, says someone paid a lot of good money to bury those in the ground, which is like, oof, those are not in the ground anymore.
So if I'm understanding correctly, tell me if I'm wrong here, but I got the sense that that was a truckload of people basically purchased like plastic replicas of their loved ones who disappeared in the departure, so that they could bury the plastic replicas in like a funeral ceremony.
That, I believe, is correct. And
that's a pretty cool idea.
No, yeah, and it's again going back to totems, right? It's like we need bodies to bury, and we don't even have bodies. This isn't. It's the same imagery as a like COVID, apocalyptic imagery of like, or of any like pandemic thing of like, oh, it's all the dead bodies. But there aren't even bodies, so they have to make bodies.
Right, they had to make,
That's so dark.
It's super dark.
And Christine's thrilled.
Yeah, what a dumb line. Just like the dream. Like
the dream.
Thanks, leftovers. I got
me do
it.
that. Let me do
like
that.
That's my job as a viewer, is to analyze the show, but appreciate it. This moment doesn't fit with the plot at all, but it's like a really cool idea that fits with what the episode is doing.
Yeah.
So I thought it was I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, a lot of the plots sometimes in the middle of season 1 boil down to some stuff happens and then there's a really cool image at the end, and
Yeah.
I'm usually okay with that. I think the Guilty Remnant stuff definitely has more meat, but it's mostly about the final scene of them taking the pictures out of the frames. But before we get to the Guilty Remnant, I want to talk about Kevin and Jill's intersecting stories a little bit.
Wait,
So this is...
talk about one more Tommy scene.
Sure.
Because there's a moment where he's going to leave it all and get on the bus and go
the phone
home.
scene. Yeah.
And he's like waiting for a phone call. The Guilty Remnant show up. They give him a brochure that says like everything that matters about you is inside. And he opens it and it's blank. And
Good.
That's pretty funny. Good gag. And then he's like, okay, Wayne, come on, give me a call, man. Now's your chance. Last chance. The bus pulls up and he gets a phone call and it's like a spam call that's like, hey, did you lose somebody in the departure? And he takes that as a sign from Wayne or something like that.
I think it's even more darkly comedic than that. I think he wants to have the like TV moment of like or the biblical moment of like, please give me a sign, please give me a sign. Right at the last second he gets a call, and the fact that it's spam is like, that's like Two Boats in a Helicopter level of dark comedy of like, ooh, you didn't get, you thought you got the thing you wanted, but you didn't, because it's not Wayne. It is, like you said, it's a spam call. Like, how did this theoretically air gapped phone even get a spam call? But I guess he takes it as enough of a like, okay, close enough, which really speaks to the truth of how visions work in real life and how like looking for signs work, which is you already knew what you wanted, you just needed something to just nudge you a little bit.
Right. And it says a lot about how susceptible Tom is to that manipulation, right? That all he needs is a sign from nowhere meaning nothing to say, okay, yeah, great. Sure. I'm on the right path.
Mm-hmm. And I think that is going to lead Tom to interesting places because he was otherwise going to take the bus home, right?
Go home, yeah.
Which, you know, we see a lot of, like, talking about Kevin, we see him realizing that Tom's phone no longer works and he can't even try to call him. And even Jill is like, I don't know what my brother does. I don't know who my brother is. Like, really sad moment, right?
Yeah.
But let's talk about Kevin and Jill for a sec. So, as we mentioned at the beginning of the episode, the baby Jesus is stolen from the manger in the middle of the town, like, field. And it's right before Christmas. We know several months have gone by, so people are like, oh no, the baby Jesus. Kids in the school are talking about it. People are talking about it in the streets. What's going on? Who took it? It's not left as a mystery for too long, because Kevin is like setting about looking into this, and he sees Jill and Amy. Amy conveniently. Top 2 side characters on Leftovers are Amy and Dennis. I want to show about Amy and Dennis, actually. Amy, because she just eats the Kevin sandwich, and she's like, yeah, it's pretty good. And he's like, that's mine. She's like, uh-huh. How do you like Queen icon. And then Dennis is just the funniest character on the show, without a doubt.
Yeah, I love Dennis.
He doesn't get paid enough. He doesn't do enough, et cetera, et cetera.
I love that all of Jill's friends are like, your dad works so hard. Give him a break.
Be nice
and she's
to your
like,
dad.
She's like,
No.
guys, we're supposed to be teens rebelling. What are you doing? He seems kind of sad. Let's cut him some slack.
Yeah, he's a cop. I love, by the way, this ties into the Kevin plot, but just how much this show portrays the police and the way that they wield power as like entirely evil, like just fully abusing power. Like the moment, you know, towards later on when they're like, oh, it's our word versus theirs against the guilty remnant who can't speak.
Yeah.
And then they just go on to like assault and then like arrest all of these guilty remnant people. It's like, oh yeah, yeah. The show's trying to. It's kind of saying something, not like very explicitly, but it's like, hey, what is? I was saying in the pilot discussion, like, what does the authority of police even mean in a world like this? It just means that you have the ability to enact violence, basically. So he suspects that Jill stole the baby. She's like, no, I didn't. We learned like 10 minutes later that she did. She's smoking weed with the baby Jesus, which is like the fact that I felt weird about that. The fact that I felt weird about that means that totems work, by the way.
You felt weird about that?
I felt a little weird about that. Yeah. I was like,
no,
oh.
that's just a fun time at the movies. Come on.
Yeah, we're just having fun. We're just doing a gag here.
Yeah.
So they're all hanging out. I like that the choke me guy, we 100% know he's fine. He made it. He's one of the friends. He's like a Shaggy type.
Yeah.
and they're like playing with the baby. And then here's my question. If Jill stole it and she doesn't want to get caught, why did she tell Kevin, like, you can't replace the baby? It matters. It has, like, meaning. Because he was like, I'll just buy a new baby. And she's the one who pushed him to be like, no, you should look into it. Did she, like, that's not a good idea. You kind of, like, implicated yourself there.
I mean, I think it's a combination of guilty conscience, like telling on herself because she can't help it.
Yeah.
And also, like, this act of rebellion and middle fingery doesn't work if he's like, yeah, I'll just go get another baby. Because then it's like, well, why did I steal this one? So she kind of has to collaborate in imbuing the thing with meaning in order for her act of stealing it to be meaningful. Because otherwise, like, what am I doing here? I'm just smoking weed with a doll that I could have bought at Target. Like, that's not cool. I want to be smoking weed with the baby Jesus, capital T.
Good point.
So, yeah, it's an interesting, like, reflection on how meaning making is not just an individual personal thing. It's like a community act, and
like money.
when people come together and make meaning in a common way, it's like, okay, yeah, baby Jesus, great. And sometimes people don't do that, like when Kevin goes to the dance and he's like, hey, I got the baby Jesus, and people are like, okay,
cool, right? Yeah, that part's hilarious. He's kind of like,
right?
Look what I did, and they're like, neat.
Congrats. Which is pretty funny too.
But just for the Jill side of the plot, the teens suggest that they give the baby Jesus a Viking funeral and put gas on it and bring it out to the water, and they give her like a Nerf dart, and they light the top of it on fire. This is absurd. I love it. She almost shoots and then
it got good. Yeah,
it got there. Yeah, and it's because with the teen plots especially, they know that it's silly and they know that it's kind of hard to write teenagers, so they're like, yeah, they just do weird stuff like this because life doesn't mean anything to them anymore. So, of course, one of them has a Nerf dart that they can just light on fire and shoot at the thing because it's cool. Also, very, very funny. Speaking of good teen writing, when she drops it and then says, go fuck yourselves, the guy goes, go fuck ourselves, go fuck ourselves. And they all chant it. I was like, that's teenagers right there. You actually got it right.
So funny. That was really good.
Swinging a hit for once.
I also loved that moment where Amy and the Frost twins. Did we look up their names on recording?
No.
They're called the Frost.
Adam and Scott Frost.
Yeah. They all have these looks of like relief and pride. Like, yes, she did the right thing. She didn't shoot that baby with a flaming arrow.
Again, The Leftovers is a show that doesn't make any like normal sense when you describe it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and also this is right after Kevin interrogates the Frost twins in their car, and
Such
it's kind of funny.
Moment. So good.
Which one of you is the fucking smart one? They're like, sir, I don't know. Jill might. I don't think she has it. And then the next scene is them being like, Jill, your dad knows you have it.
Yeah, it's really funny.
But yeah, so she like leaves the baby, or the Frost twins leave the baby in front of his house. He's like, I did it, I brought it, and then nobody cares. Lucy doesn't care. Love Lucy in this episode, by the way. She's amazing. Mayor Lucy, and then it doesn't matter.
Great,
isn't she great? She's really fun. She also like
the actor's so good. Everything she says, she puts like 3 different spins on it at once. It's awesome.
Yeah, she's on like a different show sometimes.
The moment where she says, like, Kevin's like, well, why would I look for this baby? And she's like, because you need a win, Kevin. And she's like condescending.
She's like breaking through the plot of the show a little.
Yeah, she's like condescending, but like also kind of intimate and genuinely cares about him. And it's all of that is there. I love it so much. And when she's on the phone with her assistant or whatever, and they're asking like, which baby do we need to get? Should we get the white one? And she's like, the white, of course, the fucking white one. Fuck. Great. She's an incredible actor.
Amanda Warren is the
Amanda Warren. Great work on this show.
Yeah. If it, in the original book, Kevin is the mayor of of Mapleton, but by splitting it and giving us Lucy, I think they made a good choice. They gave him someone fun.
Yeah, a good choice. Yeah,
because he can actually bounce off of somebody.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he interrogates the guys. He's like running around. Oh, and then Matt Jameson is like, by the way, I had a spare baby. You didn't have to find a baby. I literally had another baby Jesus, and they place that one, which is when Kevin is like, oh, nothing I do matters. And he throws the baby out the window. But to loop back a little bit. Yes.
But the other thing that's funny is like how much better Matt's baby Jesus is than that baby Jesus. It's like actually made to be a manger baby instead of just like a doll that somebody bought at the store.
Right.
And so Kevin can't be like, well, I need to put the original, because it's like, no. Obviously, this doll is a much better baby Jesus. So now I just have a piece of garbage.
Literally throws it out the window. He's like, this never meant anything.
Yeah.
As it stares at him. I love that too, that the camera fixates on it staring at him in the car, and it's like, is the baby staring at Kevin right now? No. This is a plastic goop thing. We saw at the beginning. It's got to be goop.
Mm-hmm.
But we assign meaning to things, you know?
Yeah.
There's also a moment when he's driving away that he nearly runs over a dog, which I love the implication that Kevin is learning, and he's like, no more shooting dogs. Some of them are our dogs. It's okay.
Must let the dog live.
This one time. His plot also intersects with the Guilty Remnant. This is probably my favorite plot in the episode because I want more Lori. I think Amy Brenneman, the actress who plays her, is also excellent.
We didn't talk about her scene in the previous episode when Matt goes to the Garvey residence to get the secret money that Kevin's dad buried for him. And Lori's just there sitting on the swing set. And what a devastating moment when she writes on the pad, "Don't tell them I was here." Oh.
She just comes and visits.
Yeah.
Because she can't, and this is what her arc is. Like, she also, like so many other people, can't give up. And she wants to commit to the Guilty Remnant's ethos and wants to, like, give everything up and throw it all away and just be part of this group and do what they tell her to do. But she can't. She has to visit her family. And she has to literally bring Meg with her to Kevin's house in the middle of the night. And I love, this is like so weird because Kevin is very kind to them until he realizes what's happening. He even says you can smoke in the house, which is really nice. But she opts to put it out. He offers them food. And Lori has Meg read this very emotional letter. Basically saying, I love you and I love our family and I didn't stop loving you, but life has changed and I need to take myself out of this story. Basically, I need to divorce it's pun intended, divorce myself from the narrative a bit. And with that in mind, here are divorce papers. And Kevin is just like, again, things have to mean things. We are married. And if you're gonna divorce me, you have to say it. And of course Lori can't, right? If she said, it's like the Matt Jamison thing. As soon as you break your own rule, nothing matters. So she's like, I can't. She doesn't say anything. And he's like, you have to fucking say it. And he's screaming at her. And that's the moment where they hit you with the gut punch and Jill walks in. And later he's like, what did you hear? And all she heard was, fucking say it. She didn't even hear the divorce part, which makes it even more powerful. So, yeah, Lori's trying to give up ties to her old life. But also Jill comes in and brings her Christmas gift, which is a beautiful lighter, an engraved lighter.
Another moment, by the way, where I wrote what the plot thing was going to be. As Jill's walking towards the tree, I wrote, Jill, don't give her gift. Don't do it. And then she gives it, and I wrote, fuck, man. It was
brutal.
Brutal. Yeah. And then I thought the gift was going to be a box of cigarettes, but it was a cigarette lighter that says, don't forget about me.
Don't forget, like the Guilty Remnant, cigarette lighter like cigarettes. That's a well thought out gift. It's a really well considered gift.
Yeah, it's a gift she's gonna use. Don't forget me. Sorry, not forget about me.
Right.
And Lori immediately drops it down the drain. Drops it in the sewer
Meg
grate.
asks her not to. Meg is like, I won't tell anyone. You should keep that. Yeah. Lori's like, no, because again, if she keeps it, none of this matters. I love that.
Well, and
so
also
much.
It's a performance for Meg, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
there's a world where maybe if she was seeing Kevin alone and he said fucking say it, maybe she would say something.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
she feels this pressure to follow the rules, not just for herself, but also because she's teaching them to Meg and trying to bring her into the guilty remnant.
That is what I mean more by none of it matters, is like as soon as the masquerade breaks for her, it breaks for Meg, it breaks for Patty, it breaks for the whole guilty remnant.
Yeah.
And like you said, once she's alone later in the episode, she goes back for that and desperately wants to reach it, but she just can't because she threw it a little bit far. It's too far past her reach.
Mm-hmm.
There's also, speaking of like totems and images that mean a lot to the people who witness them, Kevin sees Tommy's stuff in his room. It's like so sad to me is that just like in Kevin's bedroom where he sleeps? He has like Tommy's stuff all around him.
I think he was sleeping in Tommy's room.
Okay. So he's embracing that a little bit. Because then he also sees pictures of Lori with Tom's father, with a different man. Because we know that Tom is not his biological son. My only note about that scene was that Justin Theroux gives this like weird pout that doesn't like sell the emotional weight of it for me very much.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just the problem is sometimes it's like Justin Theroux is a little bit too hot to be a sad dad.
Yeah,
and I know you can be both those things, but he's too hot. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's in Tom's room because he's worried about Tom, the phone thing, and Lori mentioned like you came in and tried to fix a broken thing that happened with me and this other guy.
Yeah.
So he's got all this Tommy stuff in his head, so he decides to sleep on his bed for the night, which is not where he usually sleeps. I don't think.
Gotcha. No.
I thought this was a really interesting plot development that I didn't expect, and it adds some texture to the Tommy-Kevin relationship and explains some of their
That he's
estrangement.
Not his biological dad.
Yeah, and Kevin's kind of like trepidation trying to get in touch with him. And also there was this I had two thoughts about it. We're talking about like imbuing things with meaning, and I think there's the kind of arbitrary side of that. But there's also the like powerfully human part of that, which is Kevin being like, this kid is my son, right? And like that's a kind of meaning that he chose to treat Tommy with, which I think is
You're
the
saying
good
Tommy's a
part of
totem.
that. Tommy
No,
is
I
like
know, not explicitly. Like the
Tommy
relationship.
Tommy is son, like the concept of son, whatever that means. That's how Kevin has chosen to raise him and treat him. And I think what this episode asks on some level in talking about like there is no family, and in the thing we'll get to where the episode ends with the guilty remnant essentially erasing family photos.
Yeah.
It's sort of asking like, what is a family? What is the value of like that as a kind of traditional structure of society and a thing to cling to? Is that a thing that has value? And I think the episode makes the case in some places that it's like complicated, and the case in some places that it can be a really beautiful, powerful thing that people can choose and bring people together. Yeah. And the other thought I had in relation to Tommy and what we learn about his parentage is when he goes back into the hospital to get Christine, and he's drawn the bullseye on his forehead, because this is like a whole other cult that's like in this specific area of the country. They go barefoot and they put bullseyes on their heads. Yeah. Someone in the elevator is like, how did you get like this, son? And Tommy says, I was abandoned by my father.
And the guy just like stands there. Yeah.
Yeah. And the way that Tommy says that, you know that he's not lying. Like he's obviously lying, like he's not one of the bullseye people, but that is why he's in this position that he's in. And it goes back to what he said in episode 1, where he is categorizing people as burdened or abandoned. And now we know where Tommy falls, that he feels abandoned by someone. Now, whether that's his biological father or Kevin, I guess we'll find out. But I thought that was interesting.
Absolutely. And it's funny that you to loop back, you said it, like how the family dynamic is complicated, when Kevin is talking to Jill right before the Frost brothers drop off the baby Jesus, he talks to her about like, what did you hear? And she's like, are you like, what's going on between you and mom? And he says, oh, it's complicated, which is a classic thing your parents tell you when they don't want to tell you something. But Jill just sees right through it, and she's like, let me know when it gets simple. Like,
Right.
All right, fine. The term it's complicated doesn't actually mean anything right now. It just means you can't tell me this. So like, just let's skip to the part where you can talk to me.
Right. And it's like, Kevin, just fucking talk to your daughter, man.
Just
like,
please, dude.
This would be a whole lot easier if you could just talk to each other. He's
in a tough spot, but I was also frustrated by it. And he can talk to some people. As one of the last major things before our dramatic close is we're at the dance, and Kevin encounters Nora Durst at the dance. He sees her sitting in front of her own locker, seeming like she's having a bad time, and they have a bit of a meet cute, kind of. Which is immediately made weird, by the way. I have to say it, because he's like, "Oh, you went here," and he's like, "Why don't I remember you?" And she says, "It's because you're much older than I am." And it's like, "Oh, you're gonna put the characters together, and there's gonna be like a large age gap." But I guess they are both like adults, so it's less weird. But you did say it.
Yeah, but how big of an age gap is there really between them?
I think it's no. I think it's more like there is an age gap in the sense of high school. Like we were probably 3 to 4 years apart, as opposed to like we're not 10, 20 years apart for sure. I think they're probably like 5 or 6 years apart. And they like openly vent to each other. These are the people they can be honest to, are other broken adults. This is what it's like to be in your 40s after the departure. Is you have conversations where you talk about how like, oh, my husband cheated on me and he was the one who was departed. And then this amazing scene, the amazing line where Kevin just blurts out, he says, I cheated on my wife. And Nora's like, well, why? And he says, is there a good answer to that question? And she says, I think I just heard it. Yeah. It's like, yeah, if you're thinking about it, then at least like it mattered, like, or something. And you know that there isn't really a good answer. It's kind of like a cyclical conversation. Did you like the Nora and Kevin stuff blooming here, or did you find it kind of odd? I think
it makes sense. I'm intrigued by it. I think both of them are characters who can only really be alone in the way that they've been for so long, and for that to stay interesting. So yeah, why not toss them together, see what they talk about, what they figure out and know about each other, and I'm curious about it.
That's fair. It put the hot people together.
yeah. Make my action figures kiss each other.
They only because you asked nicely. You're pink goo action figures. And he gets an alert that the guilty remnant are standing right off of school property, to which he's like, no, they're not.
Yeah, close enough.
Close enough. So they arrest a bunch of people. He talks some shit to Patty, who just kind of grins at him, and he says, where are the rest of you? And then, here we go. The guilty remnant are about to do some big crimes. We have Amy, I think, in like smooching some boy in a house, and we see the guilty remnant like slinking about, breaking into homes, and basically their goal is they go into people's houses and take family photos. I think it's supposed to be people who were departed, specifically, that like they kept their photos, and they like systematically remove all of those photos from the houses and leave empty picture frames. One of our final images is just a bunch of empty picture frames. And it's an interesting crime, right? Because it is a breaking and entering, and it is theft, but like nobody was physically hurt. They didn't attack anyone. There's even a woman who's like awake and sees one of them doing it, but she can't move or talk. So they just kind of like stare at each other, and she's like, yeah, I'm just going to take your photos. This is like pretty evocative, I think. I'm really curious also where this leads to, because it's the first time the guilty remnant has done like a mass crime that we've seen during the episode.
Right. That was kind of part of what I was speaking to in the last discussion, is clearly they are escalating their operation here. So what are they going to do next?
It's a question.
Yeah.
I'm curious about it. I'm also curious, Magellan, did you have any stray notes on this episode? Oh, It's absolutely bananas that Jill Garvey has an Evaporators poster. I felt personally attacked. For those who don't know, Magellan and I have recently become, recently become big fans of Nardwuar, the Human Serviette, who's an interviewer, journalist, who's also the lead singer in a band called the Evaporators, which Jill has a big ass I saw it in the pilot and on her door, and I was like, "What, the Evaporators?" But in this one, we like see a full shot of like Nardwar's face on the poster, and I was like, "What?" It's a good set designer out there. He's cool. They are cool.
Yeah. And like, I wrote a note. He has this conversation with Patty, and the woman playing Patty is great. Patty is proof that acting is reacting.
Yes.
That whole performance is just like smirking, scribbling, scoffing, and it's genius.
I don't know how you do it. Hold on. The person who plays Ann Dowd, underrated. I used to get her mixed up with Margot Martindale a lot. I think they have similar vibes, but yeah, Ann Dowd. She was also in Garden State, actually, apparently.
Okay, let's go.
But she's
let's go.
Underrated. That's a super tough thing to do in acting.
Yeah. I just really like the visual of when Laurie goes back to get the lighter, and we keep cutting to see her hand close up, reaching for it, not being able to reach it. I just think that the way that sequence was cut together was really moving.
Something I just realized right this second. They probably had to like either like string a camera through there or like lift the grate or something, because they film it from inside of the grate and above her.
Yeah, where they just built a little like diorama of the inside of a grate or something.
Yeah. To cut to.
Yeah. Tommy says, "Leave your shoes" to Christine, and then we cut to Rack focusing on these little shoes next to Kevin's bed. I don't really know what the shoes are, but that was interesting. I really wanted somebody to say you have the right to remain silent to the guilty remnant, but they didn't. They were too cowardly.
That's too much.
Yeah, it'd be a little too much even for this show. But yeah, that's all I got.
Groovy. I'd love to tell you what we're going to watch next week on the Chatzovers, Magellan, if you don't mind.
Sure. Let's hear it.
Okay. Oh, good. You know what? I know I say it every week, but good. Oh, okay. Folks, next week on the Chatzovers, we are watching Season 1, Episode 5, Gladys, and Season 1, Episode 6, Guest. For Gladys, Laurie's resolve is put to the test in the wake of a brutal hate crime. After his latest initiatives to maintain the peace in Mapleton fall short, Kevin turns down an outside offer to rid the town of its problems.
Huh.
It's interesting. And then Guest, and I'm going to tell you from now, we get another character focus episode. Nora goes to New York for the second annual Departure-Related Occupations and Practices Conference.
Ooh,
and discovers unsettling circumstances.
Fuck yeah, that's what I'm wanting. An occupational conference. Fuck yes.
Focusing on Nora, you're gonna get it. But this is another one of the ones that's in my head. That episode's definitely in my brain. Yeah, I'm excited. Oh, awesome. Love it, love it, love it. Magellan, can you do me a solid, do me a plasma, and tell me where can people find you on the podcast sphere?
Sure. You can hear me on another show called Super Smash Echoes. It's a monthly video game club podcast where myself and my friend Justin play video games that either are the homes of characters in the Smash Bros. Roster or games that are related to or inspired by those games. So it's kind of Super Smash Brothers is the focal point of a video game club podcast. And it's really fun. Alan, what about you?
Yum. You can find me on another podcast called The Hunters Quorum. That's found on scanlinemedia.com, and it's where my friend Six and I talk about all of the monsters of the Monster Hunter franchise in some sort of order. And we talk about, hey, are these guys cool? What's interesting about them? Why are they like this? And we also talk about the equipment you get from beating them up and why we love the Monster Hunter games so very much. It's a great podcast, and I think you will like it, even if you have no interest in Monster Hunter, because it's kind of funny and silly. That's what we got. Let's take it to the plug zone. Magellan, I will gladly plug the zone this time, if you don't mind.
Please do.
If you have any questions, comments, thoughts, predictions, chatspod@gmail.com is our email address. Our Twitter account is @chatspod, and our community-run subreddit is r/chatspod. If you like the show, please consider rating us on Apple Podcasts or your podcast platform of choice. That really is a small but easy, quick way to get the word out there and to help the algorithm in our favor. And if you want to help us in a big way, we would love if you'd consider supporting us over on patreon.com/chatspod. That's CHATZPOD, like all instances of Chatspod. You already know the vibes. Over on Patreon, we have tiers at $1, $3, and $5 a month. You get all sorts of content. $1 and $3. $1 gets you the Magellan X-Files podcast, his solo show. $3 gets you a whole backlog of party favors and voting on things and movie commentaries and us hanging out and talking about whatever the hecky we want. And $5 gets you the privilege of privileges, which is all of the above in addition to being thanked at the end of every main episode of Chats. So that being said, this week, thank you so much to Arthur, Chloe, Jen, Kat, Lee, Magellan's mom, Marcus, Michael, Nick and Pat of the Brothers at Infinite War, Fendon, Six, and of course, Stefan. We deeply appreciate all of you, and thank you for your support. Thank you for being part of the Chats Hive, etc., etc. Magellan, to wrap things up, we like to do a segment called Chatsums, where we recommend something for the folks so that they can enjoy it between now and the next episode of the Chatsovers. What, my friend, is your Chatsover, your Chatsum, your little snippet for this week, bud?
I have it's not the strongest Chatsum I've had in recent memory, but it's, you know, if you've got some downtime and you want to give this a shot, I recently found, was recommended on YouTube, this YouTube channel called Hive Mind. And basically it's these two white guys talking about music stuff. They do tier lists, they do games, they do rankings. It's not like the most original content in the world, but they're fairly engaging, likable dudes. And I don't know, you want to watch two guys do a tier list of the top 20 most streamed songs on Spotify ever? That sounds kind of fun, right? It was a pretty good little video. You want to see these guys do a bracket of Kanye West songs to see which one's their favorite? Sure, why not? Stuff like that. So, you know, Hive Mind, they've got around 200K subscribers. They're on the come up. They mentioned they were going to do something with Nick is Not Green pretty soon. So,
Ooh.
you know, I think they're about to blow up, I think. And I had fun watching some of their videos. So that's what I would say.
Hive Mind.
Yeah. What about you?
My Chatsum is a manga I've been reading for the past couple weeks. I'm surprised I haven't Chatsummed it yet because I've been like obsessed with it in the background of reading other things and watching other things. But it's Berserk. It's Kentaro Miura's Berserk. I had never read it previously. It had been going for over 20 years. The author Miura died in 2021 tragically. It's almost been a year actually since he passed. And it's a beautiful story. I had always heard of it as like a guy with big sword fights evil demons, and that's what they made Dark Souls about. And I was like, yeah, it sounds fine. I guess I'll get to it someday. But in actuality, Berserk is a deeply, deeply emotional tale about identity, about revenge, about heartbreak, and about the mistakes that we make when trying to change ourselves for other people. I would actually, this is like a quote that I don't think has been corroborated, honestly, but I read somewhere that Miura said that he intended Berserk after a while to be more of a shoujo than a shonen because it is emotions driving actions as opposed to actions driving emotions. So if that sounds appealing to you, look beyond the beautiful violence, appreciate the beautiful violence that is Berserk, and stay for the absolutely heart-wrenching tale of my boy Guts and his friend Griffith and their friend Casca, because they go on some pretty wacky adventures, is what I'll say for now. Yeah, it's really, really special, and I'm loving reading it, honestly. I should have read it a lot sooner. The news came out literally today that they're going to actually try to finish it because he died in the middle of writing it and didn't die on like an end of an arc, so that's like a controversial thing right now. It's like, oh, geez, you pick up this guy's work, etc., etc. It's a whole thing. But that's Berserk. And that, my friends, is the Chatsovers. Thank you to Magellan for being the Adam to my Scott Frost. He is, in fact, the fucking smart one. And thank you very much, dear listener, for listening to this episode of the Chatsovers, where we watch so you remember.